And how do you think people will evolve?
I think some people may fly, I don't know. But I think we're going to be able to do what's called, I think you're going to see more and more and more people
How can a person start to shift into a higher energy state?
to the next level of yourself, to your next contribution. When you orient it to that, the journey becomes quite different. And if I was with someone who was convinced they were going to die,
Envisioning Earth as magical, are we going to see dragons flying around? Are we going to start to see more fairies?
I can do miraculous stuff sometimes. One of them worked for a hospital doing cancer, the machines that test for cancer. No one ever sat down in front of her machine was diagnosed with cancer. Well, I, it's already happening in a different kind of way than that. And I think if somebody's lost their job, the first question you want to ask is, I find the more you do for others, the more you raise your own.
Hello, y'all, and welcome back to Transformation to Expansion. I'm your host, LaJaw Bradley, and we have a special guest returning onto the show today. Soliera is here to really bless us with her wisdom and her guidance when it comes to quantum leaping, human evolution, and just allowing things to come to you. Stop working for them, stop going out there, just attracting the world that you want to live in, attracting that new version of yourself that you want to live in. And I'm so happy to have her back on the show. So real quick, in case you guys didn't know, Soliera Green is a future innovator, visionary author, quantum coach, and a source of breakthroughs that elevate and revolve, that elevate and evolve us all. She's written 19 books, y'all. That's right, 19 books. I don't even think I've written 19 essays. Okay, 19 books. That's a lot. That's really a marker of how dedicated she is to the work that she does. She's written 19 books, the latest of which is called Redesigning the Future of Global Civilization. Please welcome back to the show, Soliera Green. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Thrilled. I'm doing great, absolutely wonderful. Just life is just flowing on, doing brilliant things, having fun, making the world a better place all the time. So yeah, life is really good.
You allowed me to preview Redesigning the Future of Global Civilization. And I really love this book because it really talks about not just the future of global civilization, but also the evolution of humans, of who we are, of personhood,
Yeah,
of people.
yeah.
And as I was reading the book, I really loved how you highlight more of the positive things that are going to be changing and happening in the future. A lot of people, they talk about, we live in the end times and, AI is going to take over the world and, we're going to have mass economic crashes and mass layoffs, which we're already starting to see, right? We have certain characters, who are really pushing for this kind of end times world, scenario to happen, or at least to have people start to believe that that's what's going to happen. And there's different reasons behind that. One of which is to really, lower people's frequencies. And if you're not, not above, but if you're not aware, right, if you don't have that awareness, it makes it really easy for you to be affected by those characters. And so what I really love about your book is that you kind of bring people back to, like, no, like, this is actually a beautiful process that we're going through, and this is a process that when we get to the other side, or even as we go through it, it's going to be powerful and magical.
There are two realities going on simultaneously. I mean, some people could say there's a million different realities going on, but there are two main ones. There's the old reality, which is based on intelligence as memory tests, and the gifted have this and the others don't, and it's based on a kind of disconnection from oneself, from nature, from the universe, the earth, whatever. It's based on just a different kind of consciousness altogether, but consciousness being the set of beliefs, the air we breathe, how we view life, that kind of thing. So I'm I host a membership group called the Murmuration of Maestros, And one of the things I'm super keen about is that every single person has genius within them and mastery within them. And that genius and mastery is unique to them. It's not like, so if we look at the evolution of intelligence, which, by the way, I am going through myself at the moment, because there's so many topics I want to talk about. So, look, I started life as a normal person with regular intelligence, probably a little bit over the norm because I did okay in school. You know, I got some A's and some B's, and I was doing okay. And then I went through, trying to make it up the corporate ladder and then left and did other things. But now I have connected my intelligence, my brain, logic, intelligent mind, which stores all the life experiences and learning, etc., to a greater, what I will call a creative intelligence. So the universe is filled with a creative intelligence. The earth, nature is filled with a creative intelligence, all animals, all of it. And even artificial intelligence, which I think is poorly named, I think it should be called awesome intelligence. And if we change the name of it, we would change our relationship to it, right? So, because intelligence is intelligence. And so, one of the things I've really noticed in myself in the last 6 to 9 months is that my intelligence has expanded phenomenally. Like, I have thoughts and creations and possibilities going on. It's kind of like I'm thinking here now instead of in here. I'm not thinking from what I already know, from what's been taught to me, what I've learned. I'm creating and thinking innovatively from a very expansive, almost infinite possibilities. How do we create? How do we understand things in a different way? What's possible now? And my own intelligence has expanded phenomenally in the last, 6 to 9 months, I would say. It's probably been progressing over the years, but really, I've really noticed it recently. The other thing that's really changed is that, let me talk about being, which is another one of the things I talk about in the book. And I'm talking about we all have a life force that enters us when we are born, and when we die, that life force departs us. It's an energy, it's a vitality, I call it a beingness. It's our beings. And that being was created somewhere in some time and may have gone through many lifetimes or not. It's like it's got its own mastery. So a lot of the people that I work with, that I call maestros, they've known since they were tiny little kids that they were different, extraordinary, even here for huge purpose, with a kind of inbuilt knowing that they didn't learn from anybody. And one of the things we've been at work on in the last 20 years, but for sure the last 2 to 3 years, is that we're learning to embody the huge vitality of our beings and the knowledge and mastery of our beings that may have gone through lots of time. And it's not for me about past life stuff. I used to be a past life reader 25 years ago. It's not about that. It's about being present here fully in the.
So, have you ever felt like you're meant for more? You're here for a reason. Something inside of you knows that there's more. There's more purpose. There's more connection. There's more fulfillment. There's more love to be enjoyed in this life. What if all of that was here right now? Your life easier to navigate, your dreams easier to manifest. You can live in a life of ease, even in these uncertain times with Pluto being in Aquarius. Your community of expansion is right here at your fingertips. From the moment you enter, you feel the sense of release and comfort. No more wondering if all those downloads you got as a kid were just random thoughts. No more wondering that time you had telepathy, thinking that it was just a fluke. Be with the people you know are here for you. Join our ever-expanding community on Patreon for free. And for those of you who ask, yes, the Wellness Library is included. I love y'all so much. Let's get back to the show. Peace.
fullness of yourself, in the joy and the genius and the mastery that you are. So one of the things that this Murmuration of Maestros groups has been about is embodying sustainably on a regular day-to-day practical basis the fullness of who we are. And that's been wonderful. And we've put what I call living templates in place to do that. So it's not some weird, maybe someday, it's who we are, you know, and what comes with when you embody your being and you expand your intelligence is that you begin to have a knowing of things that you don't know. An understanding comes to you. So you see something happening, you understand a greater purpose behind it, or the new possibility that it's offering, or the purpose it's pushing you towards. It's kind of like that. And then what also happens is that the inbuilt genius that we have, which everybody does uniquely, comes pouring out of you. So now you've got an expanded intelligence, an embodied being, an unleashed unique genius. And that when that happens, you go into what I call a flow state. So in a flow state, like that's how I write 19 books. So when I wrote Redesigning the Future of Global Civilization, I wrote it in a month. And that wasn't me writing the whole month. That was just me sitting down maybe an hour a day. Just, you know, like it just comes on through. The 19 books I've written, like a lot of people would say, oh, writing a book is really hard. Like it takes years and you have to do this and that. I'm like, oh no, you just sit down, it comes, you write it. It's kind of like it's already there in some way, as if you've already written it somehow, and it just comes roaring on through. Now, let me say that may not be the case for everybody who's still in a normal place in their lives. So I wrote this today on my Facebook post. I said, I have said yes to the universe. I'm in. I'm up for whatever wants to happen. I've said yes to greatness for the world. And I've said yes to the future of this world. So I now host a podcast called The Future is Fabulous. And I interview people who are doing amazing, wonderful things to make the world a better place. And I don't mean just like a visionary, because I know some of those too, but like people who are helping children in India get better educated, have clothes, have shoes, have, you know, all that kind of thing. That's great. And I know wonderful people doing it. I'm talking about people who are creating breakthroughs. So you read when in my introduction, breakthroughs that elevate and evolve us all. So for example, I'll give you an example of that. So one of the very first ones I worked on was emotion as potential rising. So instead of fear as a terrible thing, or sadness or anger, we shouldn't have it, we should stuff it down, we should learn to get rid of our issues. No, I was like, but what if that's your very smart, intelligent body saying, hey, something's happening. You care deeply about something. There's a new possibility emerging. What do you do with that? So over the past 20 years, when I first started to write about that in the early 2000s, it's become what I call emotive power. So now it's not like not having emotion. I love having emotion. I seek it. I want to be moved to tears. I want to be stirred brilliantly. I don't even mind getting angry. Like for me, if I get angry, it's pointing me to, oh, there's something really big wanting to happen, and I care deeply about that thing. Okay, what am I going to do about that? As opposed to, rawr, you know, it's not like that. It's more like, okay, here we go. Let's see what we can create. So that's just one of them as sourcing breakthroughs. There are many, many, many like that, you know, that we look at. So, for example, you also mentioned that I'm a future innovator. So one of the things I've learned to do with my memorization of maestros is to innovate consciousness, to bring new possibilities into being. So when we first started to do it, we were accessing the quantum field of new possibilities, because genius and possibilities exist out here already in the air, but they also exist in here. And so it's about marrying those together and coming up with brand new ways to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like this whole, it's all about presence and embodiment and expansion and evolution and excitement. And for me, I absolutely believe the future is fabulous for this world. And this old reality, which is based on other ways of looking at things, is is imploding at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this new reality of we're super connected with all life. We have an expansive intelligence. We have emotive power. We have embodied beings. We have unleashed genius. You see what I mean? It's a different state of being together and creating and living practically on the planet. Okay, I've talked a lot. I better stop so you can dive in.
You talk about the split. People call it the 3D and 5D split. And we're experiencing this now, especially for those of us who are, focusing on going inward, focusing on, being that connection between the super conscious mind and what's going on within,
Yeah.
working to really embody that beingness that you talked about earlier. And then we're always met with people who are still stuck in the 3D, who are still obsessing over all these bad things happening in the world, and we're not ignoring that, right? But we see it from a different perspective, and we see it from a
Yeah.
perspective of acknowledging that it's happening, and what can we do, to help raise the frequency, to really help everybody elevate, right? And it starts with you. If you can't elevate yourself, how are you going to elevate somebody else, right?
Well, actually, let me kind of say something else about that. I find the more you do for others, the more you raise your own vibration.
Okay.
And I don't mean do for others as in being in service, because being, and that's not a bad thing, but I've often found that when people are being in service, they neglect themselves. Whereas if what you're doing is gifting your genius and mastery and contribution to the world, this joy is woven into it. And with the joy comes this incredible vitality. And with the vitality come ideas and flow and abundance and opportunities and connection and the right people and money. And it's amazing how it
Mm-hmm.
works. It is quite, people use the term magical, and I do like that term, but it sounds strange to people. Oh, it's magical, but it really is. It's
Mm-hmm.
synergistic. It's super connected. So I can sit down and say, I don't think I want to do anything this week. I'm going to have an easy week. Everything stops, and I enjoy my week. And then I think, oh, I wouldn't mind doing some more coaching calls. Bang, two within an hour after a week of nothing, because I said it that way. And why does that happen? So you were talking about attraction, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not the typical manifesting rule of law of attraction stuff. That's not that. It's that you get to a point where you are sourcing the reality, not only that you live in, but in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, this embodiment and expansion of intelligence and unleashing of genius allows you to be able to source reality. Now, I don't know, some people might say, what does that mean, source reality? Because a lot of people will say, oh, reality just happens to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? People have a job, they get fired. Or they are living in a place and the landlord says move. Like, do they have any charge of that? Right? I get that. There are some things happening in the world that are hard. But in my many number of years on this planet, I have seen that no matter what happens to you, it is always offering a next level of possibility for your life. Always, 100%, never fails.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner people get to look for the possibility, to look for the new pathway, the faster it all moves. It's like while you're still, well, not you, but while people are still sitting here and going, oh, I've lost my job. Oh my God, what am I going to do? That doesn't happen. But the minute you go, oh, opportunity, possibility, what's the purpose behind this? How do I open to it and source it coming towards me? And you call it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a state of ultra connection, you could say. And it's kind of like for me, now, the world reality is people might call it a matrix, but I don't see it like lines and codes. And I just see it, it's almost like a sentient intelligence of the world and nature and the
Mm-hmm.
universe. And I have this relationship with it, and I can expand my energy to be a co source of reality. So, one of the other breakthroughs that we've just created, so I wrote this in the book as well, is about connection. So, where let's take my own life. So, when I was working for corporate, I was living in a concrete jungle. Like, I don't think I ever saw green at all.
Wow.
Yeah, like I would go years on cements and in the city and pollution and high rises and the whole thing. But to me, and I think I had this nervousness about nature, about it being a little bit dangerous, or I wasn't trained, so However, now I think nature is just the most glorious, amazing, genius, intelligence force on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I relate to it in that way. So, one of the things we've done in the Rememoration of Maestros group is we've created a new collective intelligence, a connection of all life forms: whales, bees, trees, mycelium networks, oceans, you know, all of it, right? And it's like a giant collective field that we're all in. So when we first did it, we go, okay, we're calling the whales, calling the. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh no, it just is. It's part of the air we breathe.
You mentioned losing your job. And I know a lot of people, more and more people, every year for the next couple of years, more and more people are going to experience this. This is globally. It's not just in
Mm,
America. It's going to happen all over the world.
yeah.
There's going to be mass layoffs, like in, the thousands, maybe even millions, at some points. And so a lot of people are going to be presented with the question, now what? What am I supposed to do? Because a lot of people, their identity has been tied to what they do. It's been tied to not even what they do, but it's been tied to who they work for, or
Yeah.
what entity they're working for. And so people are going to they're going to be forced to kind of ask that question: how can a person start to shift into a higher energy state, right? Because when we quit our job, we've been really programmed to be like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, I have no money. This is my whole identity. What am I going to do with my house? All of everything is like tied to the job, right?
Yes. Absolutely. My personal belief is that we are moving more and more away from being employees to being entrepreneurs. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things we saw when COVID hit, was a lot of people were forced to stay at home and not have jobs, and they became very quite successful entrepreneurs. There's a
Mm-hmm.
guy on different media platforms. I follow him on Facebook, called Simon Squibb, and he had I think it was an ad marketing agency, and sold it for millions. And he decided he didn't want to just be a millionaire; he wanted to do good stuff. So he walks around with a microphone in the street and says to people, "Do you have a dream? Do you have a dream? Do you have a dream?"
Mm-hmm.
And he supports them in fulfilling their dreams.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes he gives them $10,000. Sometimes he just puts them up on his own social media so other people can connect and support them. And it's really cool. He just wrote a best-selling book called Do You Have a Dream? And I think if somebody's lost their job, the first question you want to ask is, what would you love to do?
Mm.
What do you want? This is an opportunity rather than going to work every day and doing the same thing maybe over and over. There's some people, maybe they love that, but it's like, what would you really love to do? And then how do you set about making that your life? And you
Mm-hmm.
have to get kind of creative and innovative with it. Like you're probably experiencing some of that yourself, aren't you? Like, because you're an entrepreneur, right? And so you're constantly looking. And sometimes it can be hard
Mm-hmm.
to get yourself going and that kind of thing. But you have to unleash your own genius and mastery. And so I would almost say to them, take stock of what you do fabulously,
Mm.
that the job may not be requiring of you and may not even be acknowledging in you. So, and I would say, like, what do you do really, really well? And what would you
Mm.
love to do with your life? And how would you
Mm.
like to contribute?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the questions I would ask. And then start from there. Yeah, and you kind of have to, what I call free think. You can't logically think your way into it. You have to kind of make up wild stuff and follow people like this guy on Facebook, Simon Squibb, or whatever media platform he's on. So you have to kind of find ways to do what you do uniquely and differently. And so
Mm.
that's what happened to me because I went first from a corporate job, left it, moved from Canada, got married to an American, then was working in a software company for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then came to England on vacation, went home, as I said in the last one, and quit my job, went back, and within a year I was living in a two-bedroom tent with my now husband with 75 pounds, which is about $100 in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Best time of my life. Most amazing time of my life, I have to say. My mother was like, "Oh my God, you're homeless." I was like, "No, Mom, I'm having a ball. I'm doing really great. Like, I have no money and I don't care, and it's all working out, and life is wonderful." That's where I was with it. So I've been there in that
Mm-hmm.
place. So what I said at the time, I'm not a teacher. I've never been a teacher. I'm not a writer. I don't think I'll ever be a writer. This was while I was living in the tent, right?
Mm.
Within a month, I led my first workshop called the All Knowing Workshop to about 10 people, and I was hooked. And in that 2 week period, I wrote my first book on a computer that we rented and plugged into the campground that we were staying in. And I rented it for £5, which dropped our 75 down to 70, and
Mm-hmm.
then wrote a book in a week. And so I became a writer and an entrepreneur and a workshop leader almost instantaneously. And from there, everything just flowed. So it was kind of like that. And you have to kind of believe in, not just believe in yourself, but believe that if you're up to good things, the universe will respond. So I'll give
Yeah.
you another example. I don't know if I said this in the last one. We're living in this tent. I'm running out of money, right? And uh, we said, "Oh, we've got to go somewhere." And all of a sudden, I got a letter from the US. I was now living in the UK, from a credit card company that said, "Oh, we're upping your credit card limit." Oh, okay. Went to the bank, took £2,000 out, and we rented our first home.
Wow.
It was like, okay, that worked. And then we bought we put £100 sofa in, which is about $125. Put a used sofa in the room, the living room, and on day 2 had our first workshop. I mean, it's
Um,
like I've been there. I'm not
mm-hmm,
just talking from, oh, I'm some affluent high corporate. I've been to those places. And what you
mm-hmm,
have to do is believe in it. Believe
mm-hmm,
in in that life is good and life will respond to you if you're up to good things.
mm-hmm.
You know? It's kind of like that. And I believe it so fully now that all I have to do is go, "Oh, it'd be nice to have another coaching call." Boom, an hour later. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
brand new will message me out of the blue. I don't even know how they found me. And I didn't do anything to do it other than say, okay, I'll have another coaching call then. It's kind of like that. It's so amazing what's possible. And people try to live their lives in a very tight space when actually we live in a very brilliant, intelligent, super connected, miraculous, magical world, universe. The air we breathe is full of magical stuff, genius stuff that will just take us to new heights if we just let it, you know?
Especially in America, we see the mansion, we see, the nice cars, we see the success, especially on social media. This People just highlight the success so much, but it's really important to really acknowledge the beginnings of that success, the beginnings of trusting the universe. And I love your story because you can choose to see things two ways. You can choose to see, I guess in your case, oh, we were homeless. We were like, we only had $75. We couldn't even afford a bottle of water. Let's just put, whatever. Or you can say we were free. That was the first time where I had time to write, to
Yeah,
really dream, and to empower myself to
yeah,
prioritize that. And I just love that because a lot of people who talk about,
yeah,
their humble beginnings, they talk about the more negative parts. But I just really love that you were like, no, it was beautiful. You really acknowledged that like this was a huge opportunity for me to really go into and to really do what I love,
oh
right?
yeah,
And just going back
yeah,
to, the mass layoffs that are going to happen,
yeah,
that's like the biggest
yeah,
thing that I've learned. When I first lost my job, this was during COVID. That was one thing I realized. I was like, well, it's COVID and I lost my job. There's no reason to go back to the States. And so that's what pushed me to actually travel. Whereas literally, if you would have asked me even a month before that, I would have been like, there's no way,
yeah,
like it's impossible to travel and just live off of, and just live my life traveling. Like you're crazy. There's no way. And then, literally a month later, like the opportunity came to me and I was just like, oh wow, no, I can do this. Um, and so, and again, it's that from that perspective of like, when I lost
yeah,
my job, I didn't see it as like, man, what am I going to do about the money? I mean, luckily I had saved a lot of money before then. I didn't even know what I was saving for. I just saved up money. But the other thing was that, I was like, oh, this is an
yeah,
opportunity for me to build what I really want. What do I really want? I really sat down with myself. I built my first business and doing astrology readings for people, and it was a really beautiful opportunity for me. And so I really want to empower our listeners too, to really, if something dramatic happens in your life, don't see it as like a curse or something negative. Like really, if you need to do some healing work or
yeah,
some kind of transformational alchemical work, do that. Do it if you feel it's necessary. But after that, really see it as an opportunity to be like, okay, you know what? Now what?
yeah,
What do I really want to do? What am I
yeah,
really, if this was really if this was really my world, if I can
yeah,
really tap into this field, this super conscious field, what do I really want to experience,
yeah,
right? This is going to be one of the focal points of redesigning the future. Is It's not just redesigning the future, it's redesigning and reprogramming our minds to really shift. So can you talk about what that's going to look like in the future?
yeah. It's a little tricky because it's going to be so extraordinarily different. It's almost hard to say, but I'll give you some examples. And I'm already into and discovering some of this in myself. We are learning now to have